Welcome, listeners, to the Traveler Chronicles, where the enchanting world of Extraeus comes to life. I'm Dungeon Master Eguile, your guide through the pivotal scenes in our thrilling Dungeons & Dragons homebrew campaign. Join us as we embark on adventures with the Travelers, a diverse group of heroes, each with their own unique reason for traveling the world. Together we'll explore the rich lore and vibrant landscapes of Extraeus, filled with magic, mystery, and unforgettable moments. And don't miss out on our special segment, Traveler's Tidings with Luna, where reporter Luna, played by my wonderful wife, D&D wife, interviews intriguing characters from our world, bringing their stories to life in delightful, immersive conversations. Whether you're a seasoned dungeon master seeking inspiration or a newcomer eager to dive into a fantastical journey, the Traveler Chronicles has something for everyone. So grab your gear and prepare for adventure. The world of Extraeus awaits. Welcome, travelers, to another exciting episode of the Traveler Chronicles. I'm your host, Dungeon Master Eguile.
And I'm your other host, D&D wife.
And we're here to guide you through the epic tales of our homebrew world of Extraeus. Prepare to dive into the rich lore and thrilling adventures that await us today.
Absolutely.
In today's episode, what we're going to do is we're going to look at specifically the continuation of the Travelers, my group of kind of slapdashed heroes that have kind of just, at this point in the story, just now started to kind of collectively become a unit. And so this is kind of their first exploration into a major town, a hub city. And we all know with Dungeons and Dragons, that's always such a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the first grand town. And we kind of talked about it in the beginning when, the Travelers first arrived and kind of saw the grandiose nature of this kind of large tribal circular structure. But what we're going to look more on is now when they kind of get to the heart, the specific heart of Aronoka, which is the Eternal Rock. And now at this point in the story, you know, my players are still very new. I mean, we're only maybe 1-2 sessions in. And so there's a lot of kind of lack, if not disinformation that has been played out so that there's not a lot of knowledge about this event. And it just happened to be that way with how we started the story. So it was a really kind of impactful moment, both as the DM and I feel as the players, which is why I wanted to focus on this, was in the sense that because of it, it was their first opportunity to really kind of start learning the world, where it wasn't just like, choo-choo, all aboard. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at that scene. We're going to break it down a little more specific. And that way, you know, it's hard, you know, as a DM to kind of sum up an entire campaign session in a 30-minute podcast. So I really just like to look at different scenes individually and kind of look at that. And so we'll break that down. But first we'll kind of talk a little bit about like the kind of the origins and the history of the Eternal Rock and kind of how I built that around their whole culture and how not only did it just kind of was supposed to be just a rock, and then it kind of grew into now this like big holy symbol that has much larger implications to the story that even the players don't know. But also we're going to also go down to our reporter on the ground for an episode of Traveler's Tidings with Luna. That way we can always get a little bit more of a, ground floor perspective and kind of hear from not only our players, but also their characters as well.
Yes, a good inside perspective.
So really, the way to look at it, and I've kind of started, and I talked a little bit about the creation of Aronoka and that it being kind of this area around that when the Mirren first discovered it seemed to just be kind of relatively peaceful. You know, predators aren't attacking, prey is being able to graze in forest, and this kind of giant circle that existed within the forest seemed to be almost naturally protected and both supernaturally protected. And the whole point of it being that it was surrounding this rock, and this rock that almost looked like, the best way I would describe it is like a bolt of lightning that had struck the ground and has now been buried into the ground.
Oh, that's cool.
Now, the depth at which the stone is planted,
no one knows.
They don't really know, right? Because obviously, as we've gone in, the Mirren aren't the most technologically advanced of the species within Extraeus. But really what it does is it kind of shows, because as obviously over generations, Mirren have used to try to do it as a sign of strength, is trying to move the eternal rock. The assumption being, whoever can move this stone in their early development would be, chieftain or be the most powerful, and they would bicker and argue about moving it an inch or whatnot.
Okay.
So it eventually became this kind of centering stone, for lack of a better word. And what it started to become is kind of the kind of marker for their unity. And so as we learned in the story from one of our characters, Luna, that this was kind of used as part of the first Aronoka festival. And that festival was to show all the Mirren coming together. And what they did was they took their hands in paint and put it all over the stone itself as kind of this symbolism of just how unmovable the Mirren were. And so that's when it became this kind of holy symbol of the entirety and the strength. And so also, because obviously the Mirren themselves being, starting out in the world developmentally and developed socially, they didn't really have a lot of written language. So the handprints were also used as like an accounting tool, really to understand and know kind of who all represented the first set of tribes. And so that was the interesting part, as the players kind of entered into this area that is kind of the center of the encampment of Aronoka, that is just kind of this large sand pit. It almost looks like an arena, only the fact that there's this large stone in the center of it. But when the players kind of walk upon it, they see kind of all these handprints, but they see at this point a lot of them have started kind of fading away, just
broken,
due to time, or whether and they do notice that some of them look to have also been scratched out, which we know from some of our other stories is kind of based on the creation story and the issues that happened during the reaping games.
There were some issues that might have caused problems.
So it was then thought that obviously, when you're trying to make like a culture, and especially like the Mirren that are all very distinct, different individuals, because we were trying to find a way to like have a lot of races, but not also have them be so spread out that it would be very difficult to keep track of. So the Eternal Rock kind of became this like, this analogous kind of connection to it, where it's like, okay, they're all different, but they're just as strong and as immovable as the stone. And that's why they're going to create this focal point. And so it's really interesting, because like all of this building and all of this, plot and lore, none of the players know this. Even the player who represents the Mirren themselves, which at the time was Tobias, his character really had no knowledge, as well as a terrible history stat. And so he kind of played the character as having really no knowledge, being that he was, kind of cast out, and he's from a cast out clan. So that way it really played on to where, okay, here's this huge significant rock, this stone that is really like this holy symbol. And so when the players get it, the players are going to do what players always do, and they're going to try to mess with it.
We want to touch it.
And I think that was really why I built it as such, because it really kind of was an opportunity for, unknowingly to them, a way to kind of unveil some of the hidden traits as some of our characters had. And also kind of start creating that difference of that, hey, there are some of you that have certain abilities and others that nothing's going to work for. And so I think that was kind of creates a range, which is why it was such an important scene, to really look at. And so really, it really kind of played out as the way we can build this story, because then it allowed for there to be questions to really build off of that too, by having it be both this like ominous, thing, but also have no information about it. It really kind of forced my players to turn around and be like, okay, we got to ask. Because it was hilarious, because I believe when Tobias was actually asked, he probably rolled something like a 3 or a 4 on the information on a history check. So he's sitting there giving kind of information that he thinks might be correct.
Maybe.
As a player, the player of Tobias Richard, he's just kind of like, oh, yeah, it's something important. It's this and that. And I'm just going, okay, yeah, just go with it. And so it was funny for like that first half of the Adventures in Aronoka, where most of the players are just like, yeah, it's just some rock, the tribal lands found the holy stick, and that's what this is. But in reality, there was so much more building to that.
A lot of development.
And obviously, I'll save more of that information for like a lore drop when we go really into the Eternal Stone and kind of its actual like large significance when it comes to the Mirren people. But for right now, it was really cool to see kind of like how players would kind of open up into this sandbox world and be kind of messing with things that they don't even realize have like huge impact for.
Yeah.
But they do learn as the story, which we'll get into later Traveler Chronicles, just how important the stone was.
Absolutely. It's such a big part. It's just so interesting that we know as players nothing about it, but it really is such a big part of our own story.
Yeah, and like when making Aronoka, I also wanted to try to hide as much as I could from you as I was like trying to like sculpt it out and figure it out because, you know, obviously having you as my wife here in the apartment with
spoilers
me. Yeah,
sometimes.
and so I really wanted to, and so I feel like by making stuff so innocuous, I think I remember you're like, oh, what's that? I'm like, oh, it's just this rock. It's a piece of decoration.
Yeah, just looks nice.
You know, I think I was like, it's like the Harry Potter tattoo or scar. It's like a lightning bolt, and you were just like, oh, okay, cool. You know, so as I'm building this a little arena, you know, you're not taking any point of like, wait, why is that important? So really, when Luna comes into the story, and I think it also opens to the funniest joke that we had, and I think that one was the whole Luna holds the bucket.
Yeah, because I had this vision, or Luna rather had this vision, and upon first arriving at Aronoka that showed, because she is an elf, she's a long-lived elf. She was there when the original tribes put their paw prints,
yeah, one or the other.
Prints on the rock.
Appendage prints.
And I held the paint bucket, but Luna only said, and I held the bucket. So it created a really funny inside joke.
But yeah, I mean, that's what also I think kind of helped build that story of kind of it basically started to downplay the significance of the stone a little bit
yeah.
with that humor. And then that way, when it did become this big part of the story, as we'll learn later, it really, I think, got that extra.
We weren't expecting it.
Oh,
yeah. It definitely became a sort of background of our minds. We were like, oh, this is nice. It's a nice little set piece, you know, for looks.
But obviously, you know, we hear a lot from, you know, Luna's perspective with her memories and also now, but we're also going to switch over to, you know, a special segment and allow her kind of to show a little bit more and give us kind of that, on the ground floor reporting. And we're going to stick to her Traveler's Tidings. So Luna, are you there?
Hello, dear listeners. This is Luna, your trusty archivist and on-field reporter. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Captain V, a man of many mysteries. Captain V, can you tell us why you're still following the group?
Well, Luna, it's a combination of duty and personal curiosity. This group definitely needs my expertise. I mean, look at them. And there's something about this journey that's just calling me.
Interesting. Let me ask, is someone paying you to be here?
Absolutely not. It is more about honor and finding answers to my own questions. But who told you that?
Nobody told me that. Oh, I see. Well, ignoring that for a second, I saw you had a moment with the Eternal Rock. Can you tell us how it felt?
I don't know. I mean, I did touch the rock. Man, it was overwhelming. I mean, I heard so many voices I've never heard in so long, just telling me to go to different places.
Oh, well, I've never heard of hearing voices being a good thing, but, we'll keep an open mind and hopefully they don't lead you down a dark path. And, I'd like to find out, how does it feel to discover that you're Mirren? Because as far as I thought, you had mentioned that you were Scalekin, but now it turns out you're Mirren.
Apparently, we both learned something new recently. I mean, it is truly, it's crazy, it's insane even. It's just, I've always felt a little different than at home, but this is just, it makes me understand. It's just a mix of such confusion and pride, I don't know.
Oh, I can see why it would be a little jarring, I understand. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're originally from?
Well, I come from just a small island far from here, a place of humble beginnings. Nothing like the grandeur of Aronoka.
Oh, I see. It's grand here. Well, it certainly must be a little humble there, but I'm glad you were able to make the journey and see such a beautiful place. I think everyone should see Aronoka. But thank you so much for sharing, Captain V.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll leave you to your journeying, and I hope it's just as fascinating as it's been so far. And now let's speak with the player behind Captain V, Thomas. Welcome, Thomas.
Hello.
Welcome. So how did it feel to learn that your character is a Mirren?
I mean, it was honestly a surprise. Like overall, it was just a new layer to V's backstory that honestly I didn't even really know, and it just gave me a lot to think about and play with in the world.
Oh, that's lovely. You know, it's definitely good fodder for role playing. And as one of the newer players, how has it been learning sort of to play D&D? Because I know you've played a little bit earlier in your life, but this is really a sort of regular thing now.
It's honestly been a fantastic adventure, and like the community is supportive. You guys have been so helpful, and like
you.
every part of it has truly been eye-opening and very well received.
And I know you've played before, but how is it now that you're playing a homebrew campaign completely from the imagination of someone that hasn't written it into book yet?
It's honestly just, I think it makes it better in a way, because you can't find any like expectations or like, you know, make it a one way, like the road is multiple openings now, and there's no direction, no map for it, you know.
Gotcha. That's good to know. And in the first fight, Captain V was close to death's door so early in the story. Did you worry that it could have been the end right then and there?
Honestly, yeah. I mean, being so early on, like not fully grasping how death kind of works or going unconscious works. Yeah, but it just made me more invested in him and trying to make so I don't come to that point.
Conclusion, right? That's good. Well, I'm glad that you absolutely love Captain V. But I want to know, are you planning on keeping Captain V so closed off from the rest of us, or do you see him opening up to the group soon?
I feel like he will probably try to open up to more of the group when he feels more at home with each character, per se.
Understood.
I feel like he'll slowly try to open up to everybody, but it's going to take some time.
He's a little shy, Captain V.
Just a little.
Understood. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Traveler's Tidings, Thomas. It was really good to hear from you. And now I'm going to turn it back to my wonderful host over there at Traveler Chronicles. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Luna. Thank you. Always love to hear from our party members and different players every time.
Right.
But obviously, now is the time for us to take that closer look at the scene where Captain V touches the actual Eternal Rock. It was such a pivotal moment, and it was rich with kind of emotion and significance that I felt like it had to be the one we had to zoom in on.
Yeah, really. It was the most poignant part of us arriving at Aronoka.
Right. And so the stage is kind of set as the party has entered kind of the center stage, and the entire time, like, they really face no opposition to get there. Like, nothing is preventing them from entering the arena.
No, not really.
It was just more comical as they get into this kind of what feels like a gladiatorial arena, as it's just kind of this soft clay and sand mixture, just being kind of stands surrounding the rock. So it's kind of this strange area, as the entire time they've told when they arrive here is, you know, nobody spills blood.
Yeah.
But they're walking into what feels like a gladiatorial arena. And so it gets to a moment where the party is very much starting to kind of spread out as there's this open space. And it starts off with basically our kind of plucky, you know, players of Bogbean and Bricky. Basically, once they're told, no, don't touch anything, of course their focus is we're going to try to touch it.
They want to touch it, yeah.
You know, so while they're doing that, it left for an interesting, because Thomas's character, Captain V, it was kind of the first moment where he kind of took an opportunity to do something kind of solo off to the side.
And stealthy. I think it was the first time he went like full
in
rogue.
a very rogue fashion, because seeing all the kind of distractions being caused by the other players, he takes the opportunity. And what I thought was humorous, it was just more of, I think in his perspective, was just to prove a point.
Yeah.
And be like, no, look, it's nothing. And then he basically touches it and like zones out for half a second. And during that time, you know, he gets these kind of conflicting voices kind of calling out to him. One kind of great, like kind of more grateful and welcoming and telling him that he is a returned home.
Aww.
But then right as he's hearing that voice, another kind of screeching female voice begins kind of like just coaxing him in his mind to return to the island, repeatedly saying, return to the island, to where he starts kind of having this pull back and forth that I believe Luna was able to notice as he's kind of stutter stepping a little bit before he's able to kind of remove his hand from that. But I remember when that moment happened, I kind of got that look from, you know, Thomas is kind of looking like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, obviously,
What's happening?
when other players are doing something and nothing happens to them, he kind of gets this look of like, okay, why am I, it's the one of these things is not like the other, and I need answers.
Yeah.
And so it kind of, I think it started flowing in his mind as Luna at the time was also saying, hey, no, you're Mirren. What are you talking about? Like,
I know you.
And at first it thought it was a misunderstanding. And so once V is kind of taken his hand away from that, it really kind of, I think, that moment started a chain reaction for V's character development, because now it was more of, when you're the outsider, when you're like, oh, I'm this captain and I've always thought I'm from these islands, it's where I'm from, and I'm just a traveler. But now it's, wait, I'm from here. So there's obviously going to be more story there, but it is in a sense that it's a story that he'll have to go searching for. So I think that's kind of that interesting dynamic, is that V himself is so scared and trying to hold things back, but because of that, he's also losing out on opportunities maybe to learn more about his past or his history because of that kind of scared shyness.
Yeah, and we have to deal with that a little bit,
But I think the reason it changes is because now that he's kind of now on this conflict, am I Scalekin? Am I Mirren? But the potential of, well, if I'm Mirren, he's starting to see kind of, oh, look, there's this populace that, they have their issues, but as we've moved from tribe to tribe, they're starting to work together. He's seeing them, now they've all come together for this festival and they're all interacting together. So I think it leads that where we're going to probably see more down the road as the story progresses on V's side, of probably seeing him maybe try to find out more of who he is, as well as if he can make connections with these people. It'll be interesting to see if he starts maybe forging those connections with like Tobias, who we know is a fellow Mirren. Obviously we'll see, it'll probably be interesting dynamics with a cleric of good and a pirate rogue.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that turns out.
But now they kind of have this connection that there wasn't there essentially when characters were being made.
Yeah, it's brand new just from the story.
And so I think that's why when we came out of that episode and as we ended at that part, that was really what set to me was the most significant. Because now it's like this player who at first is like, okay, I'm the outcast, and in the background, as we said, it was very much like this player wasn't actually supposed to really potentially be around for very often.
Right? Yeah.
So it was like, oh, wait, now the story's changed, and now I'm being told, wait, I am part of this group.
I am important.
I am part, right. I'm part of them. I now have technically a brother on the table.
Yeah.
And I think that showed not only V that was the starting of the connection, but also Thomas as well, and
being a permanent member of the table.
That it was becoming his story was going to be this integral part of the whole collective of the story. And that's why I really wanted to focus on that specifically, because I think with DMs it's hard to say, I get questions like, who's your favorite NPC or what's it? It's like, well, it's not necessarily like the people, it's the scenes. It's
the moments.
Those moments when the Nat 20 creates this grand scene or the Nat 1 causes everything to fail.
Right.
But it's really those stories that make up the D&D rather than just worrying about how does everything play out. Just focus on the small parts that are the important parts, because there's so much things. Are you going to remember every shopping session you have in D&D?
Yeah,
no,
tough.
focus on those points, write about those points, and keep those scenes in your head. And that's what I like to do as a DM. So like these are the scenes for every Traveler's Chronicle. These are the scenes that will always stay in my head as I listen or as I remember about my campaigns.
Yeah, and I feel like that's similar for us as players as well. We tend to live by those special big moments that kind of shine out to us.
Yeah. But I also want to thank everyone for joining us on this episode of Traveler's Chronicle. This is our new kind of setup to our season 2 for Traveler's Chronicles. So I hope everyone enjoys this kind of new format. If you really enjoyed your journey today, please like, review, and subscribe to our podcast. Your support helps us to continue bringing the world of Extraeus to everyone we can. We also invite you to join our community on Discord, where you can connect with us and the fellow travelers. You can talk to all these guys. I'm sure they'll be available to answer any questions. And you can get a little deeper into the heart of Extraeus. But be sure to stay tuned to our next episode of Traveler's Chronicles, where we're going to look into the actual festival getting started and the tournament
Day 1
that starts on, and how our players first get kind of the taste of more not only smaller combat in groups of 3, but also the idea of this kind of lack of bloodshed gladiatorial arena.
Yeah, it's a little more muted in that way, less violence.
But as always, thank you all for being part of our journey. Until next time, keep rolling those dice, and may your travels be filled with wonder and excitement.
Goodbye.
Farewell, travelers. Thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of the Traveler Chronicles. We hope you enjoyed your journey through the world of Extraeus and the adventures of the travelers themselves. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. Your support helps us continue to bring the magic of Extraeus to life. Want to be part of the story? Join our community on Discord, where you can chat with us and the travelers themselves. Share your own adventures and dive even deeper into the world of Extraeus. Don't forget to check out our videos on the Couple of Nerds YouTube page for even more content, including behind-the-scenes looks, painting tutorials by D&D Wife, and so much more. Thank you for being a part of our adventure. So keep rolling those dice, and may your journeys be filled with wonder and excitement. Till next time, on the next episode of the Traveler Chronicles.